welcome to the insight session today for Stratum. We are going to go through some tips and tricks to make your data stand out. So what can we do within the Stratum interface to really kind of help make the data stick out, say some things to us, and hopefully we can find anomalies a lot easier. So we'll look at view customization options there to do some of this, such things such as conditional formatting. Not sure if you've messed at all around with much of that, but if not, today is the day that you can learn more about that. Different types of customizations as well. Column coloring, make certain columns stick out, maybe a profitability column. Maybe you want some repetitiveness in your view to make it easier on the eyes. Row coloring is another one. We'll take a look at some of those options. Other things in the menu for user display options, we'll take a look at some of those different things as well. And then we'll field any questions if you have any, and then feel free to use the chat option as well. So conditional formatting, that's one of the easier, better ways of making the data stand out. You can do it on any column. Some folks might be under the impression that you can only do it for calculated columns. You can do it for any data column actually. So it does have to be a data column. It cannot be a dimension. So certainly that is a distinction. We have conditions that are easier to identify. We have predefined conditions that you can go in and select from that might fit the need of what you're looking for. So how do we and you could do it on a stored or a calculated column, as I said. So that's completely available. It doesn't have to be a calculated column. If you right click on any column of data and select properties, you'll see that there's a toggle for the conditional format option. And so you can, when you turn that on, you actually automatically get prompted to select one of the predefined conditional formats, as you can see down here below. So, as you can see, you've got the ability to, turn that on for any column of data. You can then turn that on. By default, it's off, of course. You toggle that on to yes. You then get prompted to either select a predefined conditional format, or you can create a custom conditional format as well by clicking on the custom. So here's that menu that you get, and we'll go through this on the demo, but here's that menu that you would get to select that any of those predefined conditional formats. If you want to build your own, there's a little custom button down there to basically go in and build your own. At that point, the menu you see down here below pops up, and at that point you can go ahead and start creating your custom conditional format, and then you can supply your own thresholds as needed, and you can keep adding in conditions. I mean, you can layer in more conditions, maybe do like a traffic light red, yellow, green scenario, and I'll show you some of that as well. Another great way to customize the view is by using the display text. So you can actually go in and tell the product to essentially use the description as its drillable item. And then you can use that as the drillable area that users would click in on to drill on, instead of seeing the division code, which may not mean anything to users. You can then say, well, let's not use the value. Let's use the long description as the displayable level members, if you will. So I'm going to show you where that is. Again, it's under the properties menu for the levels that you have within your views. And you can obviously toggle those to display differently as well. And this works well for graphing or charting, so if there's like some charting that you want to do within the view, or using some of the new dashboard charts that are available in the latest release. this gets rid of, etc. Codes that you may not want to be present within your charts. You can easily get rid of those by using this technique. Here's the fill coloring. So if you want to fill in the entire column to a specific color, again, properties, right click that column header, select properties. As you can see, there's a fill color option there, and you can select from the Windows color palette, any color that you want to make that column. So again, if you want to make a certain column stand out, draw attention to, break repetitiveness, all kinds of reasons why you'd want to do something like this. User display options. So if you're in your view, you can go into the edit display options within your view, and you can actually do a lot of things, as you can see. You can turn on and off your paging. You can lock your rows and columns in case you want to select all of your rows and page through that with a scroll bar. You can override the view page size. You can get rid of your data grid. So just another way to customize the view a little bit better or worse, depending on how you want to look at it. And other options that are not necessarily cosmetic per se, but and as you can see, the totals, obviously you can control your totals and your repeating item concepts as well. Repeating item labels, that just makes the view look more like a flat file. And I can show you what some of these do. The show all others will show you if you're doing a top 10 or a top 5. This will summarize all the others that did not make that break. And again, we'll play around with some of this. In the grid format, you can see that you can override your row coloring. So at this point, you can kind of decide what you want to see within your view and override what was already in the view. You could save that view as your own personal view, of course. Data captions, data values, as you can see, you can even change the font size, and the font color. So again, making data stand out, this definitely would be an option to do some of that as well. It's not condition-based like conditional formatting would be, but again, if you want for a specific column of data, you can definitely make it stand out this way. That's me, that's my email, and you can reach me at any time if you have any questions about anything about Stratum. Feel free to contact me. Don't forget to go to customernet.sylvan.com, where we have a vast knowledge base that's been revamped and redesigned to make it easier and more helpful. A lot more information is available. That's our YouTube channel, where this video will be online at the end of the day, and you can review the concepts at your own leisure. Let's take a look at some of this in action. Well, there's the new dashboarding. So if you're not up on this latest release of 7.4, you're missing out on some of the new dashboarding that we can do within Stratum. Check that out. So very visual, obviously. Make sure you contact me if you're interested, and we can get you upgraded pretty easily. So not a huge undertaking there, right? Here's the homepage, the regular homepage that you would get in 7.4, their latest release, right? All right, so let's go through some of these concepts. So if we look at some of the views that we run here, comparative sales, and I'm just going to bring up more rows so that we can see what the conditional formatting looks like here. So obviously, this view, already has some conditional formatting defined within some of the calculations, so that we can see discrepancies a lot easier. Toleration, thresholds, what we deem good. Obviously, here's my year-to-date scenario over here on the right-hand side. We can see that, well, we've got acceptable growth across the board. We do see something cautionary here. in yellow, and we could see that sugar drop. Hey, I didn't name these, so don't blame me. It's a fake food company that we use here, but our sugar top brand is marginal. You know, the growth is what we would consider marginal based on the thresholds that have been decided upon for this particular conditional format. Everything else has met that threshold, and as you can see, comes back as a green, a good scenario, a upward looking arrow. You know, as you can see, we can change the background of the cells. We can also supply an indicator. So again, it's easier to identify some of these cautionary areas, or if we go over here to our current month scenario comparisons, well, we can see a lot of red. We can see that current month is lagging behind based on the same month of the prior year. And again, this might be because of the current month's it's not completely full. It's not done yet. So we haven't completed the month yet. So this would be expected, I would imagine, in your company, in your business as well. If you were to look at current month sales versus the same month of the prior year, well, you have a full, you're comparing it to a full month. If we were to toggle this to the prior month as opposed to current month, we know that the previous month would be a closed month and would be more of an apples to apples comparison, where we can see that indeed, everything's great across the board. Well, given that this is demo data, what fun is that, right? So let's bring back current month, and that way we'll have some scenarios here that we can see that are negative, and we know what they look like, right? Not only that, but it's been bolded. We can see that that's been bolded. If I hover over that, it tells me that, it gives me some information. Green up 20+%, yellow sales is 0 to 19, anything below that is red. So now when you know what the conditions are based on that hover text, that again, you will define when you define your, when you're within the properties of that particular column. So let's take a look at this. If we right click that column header, and if we go into properties, we can see that the properties menu populates here on the right-hand side. And we can see that a couple things are going on here, right? We've got a calculation, right? We've got a format string that's showing the data in a percent sign. So that's yet another way of making data stand out, right? I mean, if we were to show this any other way, it would not look right. It would just be a number, right? So if we want to show that as a percent, your format strings are yet another way to actually show. If you want two spot decimals for that percent, if you want the percent sign display mask, all that stuff comes from your format string, right? Your fill color, well, we're not going to mess with that because we don't really want to do that here, because that'll override our conditional formatting. So we don't want to fill this. And then down here, we can see that we have the pop-up expression identified, and then we also have the conditional format selected, which looks like sales this year versus last. If we go into that and click that button, we can see that we're having here's all the predefined conditional formats that we can select from. And in this case, as you can see, they selected one called sales this year versus last. Here's that custom button I was talking about in the presentation. So we can actually go into that and we can see what the condition is. If we wanted to change that, we could actually go ahead and do that. If we wanted to maybe make the threshold a little bit larger, we can always go in and make that a 2.5 instead of just a 2.0. And we can click OK to that. At this point, we're customizing it, so it needs a new name. So this would, be our Stratum, sales comparison format, and you can customize it for your own liking and change out what, what some of these thresholds are. So that's a custom conditional format. Instead of just selecting what's available there, we're actually making it custom. So as we can see now, everything is marginal because we've changed that and we overrode the predefined format with something that we wanted to put in there. Maybe there's some sort of new directive that we want to see 25%. Maybe there's a bonus tied to 25% sales for me, for these different categories. Whatever the case is, you can go in, customize these formats, get what you need out of the the different thresholds that you would deem necessary for success, caution, and then failure. As you can see, you can add in more, you can add in as many conditions as you want. So you can get pretty layered with this, right? Don't go too crazy, but you can keep adding in different layers of thresholds and, do it that way as well. So you can build out your conditions as needed. Okay. So over here, we can see that if we right click that, go to properties, this one's got basically, the same rule applied here as well. It's using the same conditional format. The pop-up expression, if we turn that on, we can see that the rule has been selected to show up for the pop-up. And that way that, so that's easy to do, right? So we know that if we hover over that, the value is for all other values. If we hover over the yellow, that value is greater than or equal to 0. Here's one that's green, and given the fact that we customize that, we should, and I don't know if we have a pop-up for that one or not. Here's the pop-up for that column. Looks like that one's showing a description. That's not, I don't think we have one for that. Let's change that to the rule. And there you go. And that's why that wasn't showing. It was pointed to the description of the format instead of the actual rule, which is what we typically would want to show there. We can see the yellow. Yep. So that's exactly what you'd want to see for that. If we wanted to fill a column, we can take a look at that. So here's your fill color options. And again, this is your standard Windows palette. So here we can come in, fill a specific column with any of our data, or color options that we have here. So if I want it like a light blue or a light turquoise, I can then go ahead and fill that column in and make that stand out a little bit more than the other columns. Here's our row coloring, as you can see, is standard. That's by default, and that's controlled by administrators. So that can be changed too. It's changed in a different spot, but you can change that so that your global row coloring options are uniform, across the board for all users. Now I can override this, right? I can go into my edit display options. And if I go into that and I override some of that, part of that would be the grid format. So maybe if I want that alternating color to be something different, maybe a little bit more, a different color or a different shade, whatever it is you're looking for, right? And that gives her a different pop. So, going into your display options here, I can then go in and if I select the grid format tab, here's where I can really kind of show and the total row column, maybe make that more of a red, so that the total column or the total row pops a little bit more too. So all kinds of fun things that you can do there. Maybe a gray or darker gray might look better there. You know, just kind of that kind of looks gray actually, but this might look better. Just kind of giving it more of a total, you know, grand total band look and feel. So that's, again, your edit display options. In any view, you can come in, go into this menu, you know, make any necessary tweaks as needed. If I don't want to see the grid, I can get rid of that too. And that, you know, that gets rid of the grid. So if you have some graphs here, you know, you can always get rid of the data grid and it'll just be a graphical view. So you can completely get rid of that, the data grid. But of course, if you don't have anything other than the data grid, well, that's not going to help. The presentation format can be an Excel or viewer, so that when you run the view, it'll either run within Stratum or prompt you to download an Excel spreadsheet. Here's your show totals. You probably always want that on. Repeated item labels. So then again, this is going to give you, as I do my drill downs, it's going to give you more of a flat foot file look and feel to the data. This might look a little bit better. And it's going to fill in everything as you drill in, so that, you know, all your descriptions fill in there as looking more like a flat file. We can see it all fill in there. If I get rid of some of my totals, I can actually make it look a lot like a flat file. Just getting rid of some totals here, going to my properties and selecting no to my totals. As you can see, I'm creating what appears to be a flat file without totals. And that's your repeating. To get that, you can turn on your repeated item labels. And then show all others. If you want to do like a top N, for instance, if I do put in a filter here and I select maybe a top count of 10, it's going to show me my top 10 records. Let's go down to just one row here. Let's do a top 5. So here I've got my top 5 brands company wide based on your year to date or rolling, scenario sales. So top 5. If I want to see all others, I can turn that on here, and it'll show me the all others for the product, or at least it should. Here we go. Just do it at the right level, and there's your all others break. So now I've got my top 5 product brands, and then the all others coming in at roughly around 18 mil. And again, that could be turned on. That could be turned on here for all others. It could also be turned on, obviously, here by row or by the different dimensions. So if I go into my property menu here, then I can see all others is turned on for product brand. And then if I put product after that, and then I can do the same thing for product. So I'm going to turn that on for all others as well. Right, so that's been done. So if I make a selection and I go down, obviously I still see my top 5 count, and then I get an all others break at the product level. Right, so this is my top 5 items for Farm Fresh, and then any of the items that didn't make that filter, then obviously, they're not gonna show here, but we could see them summarized in the all others break there. And we have a chat. Oh, top count. Oh, no problem. It's a filter at the column header. So any one of your measures, right? I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to drill back. I'm just going to clear that filter out, and I'm going to redefine it for you. So there it goes. So now we're looking at all of our brands. We still got the all other break turned on. It's not really serving a purpose right now because we don't have a filter applied. So if I want to, let's do the filter over here on my year to date column. So you can do it on any column. And if I right click my year-to-date column over here and filter edit, that takes me into that little menu that you see here. And I can move that. I can drag and drop that over here if I want to, because I'm working with this particular column here. Here's my top count. And then here's the value that I want to put in for that top count. It does the top count, right? I can hover over that and I can see that indeed there's my top 5 count. And then there's my top 5 rows of information, and there's my all other break there. So pretty easy to do, right? And normally when you do this on one column, it would just be on that, just on that particular column. You can clear that out. You can do it on any other column at that point. You can also, don't forget, you can come up here to the filter menu and you can apply it there too. So I could do the same thing here and apply that filter. I want to go to my data items here, and basically it would, it gives me the same menu, right? So I could do the same thing within the filter menu as well. It just seems more intuitive if I come into the column header and do it from the actual column header there. So, gosh, I want to change the font a little bit too. So let's do some of that. Data captions, data values. We can change the font. I could do like a Calibri. Maybe if we want to make it a little bit bigger. Font color, interestingly enough, can be changed. So now the view, as you can see, my font for the entire view has been changed to what I selected there. Right. So if I want to make that bigger, well, 14 is about as big as it can go, but cool, right? I mean, you can change the actual font of the view. I don't know what some of these look like, but you can get a different spin on some, what the actual numbers look like there. As you can see, the font is changing. So cool things. I mean, you can kind of make it your own, make it look a little different. If you prefer a specific font, maybe you think the data looks better a certain way. It's up to you, right? You're welcome. So yeah, make it yours, right? Make the data pop. Use that conditional formatting. I think your users would appreciate it. And yeah, I think that once you start doing some of this, you'll feel more comfortable with the different areas that you can use to customize your views.